Hello, I'm your host Jim McLean. Welcome back to another episode of the Banterflix Movie Review Show here on NVTV. Let's see what movies we'll be talking about tonight. We'll be sharing our thoughts on Evil Dead Rise as we review Lee Cronin's latest installment in the horror franchise. And our pick of the streams is Witness, which is available to watch on Paramount+. So that's what I've lined up for you this week, and joining me in the studio this evening is one half of Banterflix's very own Sleuth Sisters. That's our deputy editor, Joe McElroy.
Good evening, Jim.
Joe, we have a packed show for you this week, so without any further ado, let's get stuck into some movie news.
Horrible nightmare. Dreamed I went back in time.
Well, safe and sound now, back in good old 1955.
1955? Wait a minute, Doc. Are you telling me that you built a time machine out of a DeLorean?
The way I see it, if you're gonna build a time machine into a car, why not do it with some style?
Hey, McFly!
This is the big one, the one I've been waiting for all my life.
You're my mom. You're my mom.
What do you want, gigawatts?
Mommy, we're sending you back to the future.
So that's a clip of Back to the Future, which is going to be one of the films, Joe, that's going to be screened at the Omniplex until the 4th of May. They asked their regular audience to pick some of their favourite films. I've got the list in front of me here. So they're starting with The Dark Knight. You've got Shrek, Despicable Me, Pulp Fiction. The list goes on. There's Interstellar. There's Interstellar, as we've mentioned. There's Back to the Future. So it's an eclectic mix for there. You know, it's a mix of, great sci-fi like Interstellar, Dark Knight, as I've mentioned. So kids' films. But it got me thinking, Joe, what would be the one film, if you could get now Omniplex, if you could speak to them directly and say, right, just screen this film for me on the big screen, I will be there.
Well, I think people who know me knows this is an obvious answer, which I think it was screened fairly recently at the drive-in. It's Blade Runner for me. I absolutely adore that film. I've had the pleasure of seeing it once in the cinema, but that's years and years ago, and it was just a fantastic experience. It just, as soon as the title card goes up and then straight into I say futuristic LA. It's 2019 then. It was the past then, but now it's the future and all. But it just blew me away, and just seeing that on the screen, the big screen, is just a really special experience.
Yeah, I would agree with you. I mean, Blade Runner's fab. I know the Belfast Film Festival, as you mentioned, did a drive-in screening. Unfortunately, I didn't get to go. I haven't done the drive-in thing. I know you have. Haven't you done over in Canada? You've done the drive-in thing? Yes,
I did. It was not really drive-in. It was more sitting in the park, and they just showed a film on the screen. So it's kind of like drive-in. And they showed Annie Hall, which was,
it's a good film to go
see.
Good film, yeah. Now, if I had to pick a film, thanks for asking, by the way, Joe. Thanks for asking. If I had to pick a film to go see on the big screen again, you've mentioned Blade Runner, which I do love. I know they've got The Dark Knight. I would just like to see Batman Begins. Everyone always talks about how great Nolan's trilogy is. They all talk about The Dark Knight. No one really talks about The Dark Knight Rises. I have a soft spot for it, but everyone always seems to overlook Batman Begins. But that's just me. As I say, thanks for asking, Joe. Now, talking about movie news, I know you came into the studio this evening, you wanted to mention it. So the Russo brothers, who of course did all the fabulous things with the Marvel Cinematic Universe, they've been talking recently. I know we've mentioned it in the past in this new series about the fact that AI and its influence on the industry. They're predicting, I think, within 2 years, you're going to have a film that's written by an AI. So I know there's loads of things we could go down. We don't have that much time because we do have to review some movies. But your thoughts on that? It's a worrying thing, and it's a strange little thing to think that you could be watching films written by AI and not have any human involvement. But I've also seen some films in the past couple of years that it wouldn't surprise me if it was written by a robot.
Well, yeah, especially when it comes from the Russos, whose last film, The Grey Man, just felt like an algorithm churning stuff out. It was terrible. I just didn't like it and didn't take to it. If other people did, all well and good. But At a larger sort of view of it, I think it's an absolutely terrible idea. I just hate the idea of, studios will just maybe catch on and go, well, it's cheap if we don't hire a screenwriter. We just run this through an algorithm. We'll just see like, okay, what's popular with people now? What do they like? And then we'll just churn it all into this AI and it'll generate something that, they think people will like, and people just maybe just blindly watch. You know yourself, if you go to watch something on Netflix, you're like, I just want to turn off my mind for about 2 hours, so I'll just put this on. That's what I'm worried about, these AI films and what they're going to be, and especially if they do become hits in their own right in terms of, people streaming them, watching them, or even going to the cinema if they're released as blockbusters. I think it's an absolutely terrible idea, and it's just taking, the art out of the artist's hands.
Yeah, it goes back to the idea we've talked a lot about, not just in this series, but since the show's been on air. We've talked about the producers view, as you mentioned, they don't view films as art, they view them as content. And you're seeing that much more with the rise of the streaming services. It's all about content and how can you keep and get people to watch your stuff. I mean, part of me does like the thought of maybe an AI screenwriter working on the next Terminator movie. There's an irony there, who wants to know, but I just have this fear that it is going to become something that's very generic and it'll just have Ryan Reynolds. That'll be the thing. He'll be there because it'll all be about working out numbers and algorithms in that sense. So yeah, it is a depressing thought to think that an AI might creating a blockbuster, and the sad thing is probably it will be a blockbuster success. Who knows, maybe I've already mentioned Terminator, it might be a Transformers movie, I don't know. But look, let's not spend any more time on that. You just wanted to mention it before we started the show. But earlier this week, Joe, it was 2 celebrations. Not only was it Miss Congeniality Day, the 25th of April, but it was also Alien Day. So I thought with that, let's have a look at Ridley Scott's film from 1979 and share our thoughts on the film.
Still with us, Brett?
Right.
Yeah.
Oh, she's dead.
Anybody ever tell you look dead?
Intercepted a transmission of unknown origin.
What kind of a transmission?
SOS.
Human.
Ash, can you see this?
I've never seen anything like it.
Moving on to second position. We've got this far, we must go on. We have to go on.
It doesn't look like an SOS. It looks like a warning.
It seems to have life. Wait a minute, there's movement.
What the hell is that?
You still don't understand what you're dealing with, do you? Perfect organism.
The emergency destruct system is now activated. The ship will detonate in T-minus 10 seconds. Oh God, it's moving right towards you. 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1.
So that's a look at Ridley Scott's Alien, 44 years of age. Joe still looks fresh, still looks fab on the big screen. We're talking earlier on about films you'd want to see on the biggest screen possible. Alien is one of them, and I know that a few cinemas here have screened both Alien and Aliens to be part of the celebrations. Hey, Panaflix got there first. We've done that years ago. But why do you think, after 44 years, there's still so much love? I guess we're mentioning Ridley Scott's original, but we've got James Cameron's Aliens and some other films in the series as well. Although I do like Alien 3, as flawed as it is. But why do you think there's such enduring love for that film?
I think, well, for me, the obvious thing is maybe the iconography in and around, the creature itself. Before up to that point, you'd never seen anything like that, and everything is so fresh and new in and around it. But for me, it actually all stems from Ripley and her character and the impact that she's had on cinema in general. Like with Alien, you're like, oh, I've never seen a female lead in this position before, and then Aliens took it to another level as well. And then obviously the series followed her story, and then it kind of broke away from that, you know, with the end of Resurrection, and went its own way with the Predator stuff, and then by going to the prequel stuff. But I think it's really just, it comes back to people wanting something like the original. They just want what is, you know, Ridley Scott said, he just wanted Texas Chainsaw Massacre in space, you know, like a haunted house film, you know, a slasher in a small confined area, you know, stripped back and simple, but, you know, stunning to look at the same time. So I think that's what's helped it endure, plus the fact that it still holds up in terms of how scary it is.
Yeah, I mean, we're not going to disagree on this one. I love Alien. I think it's all about the tension. You know, I think Scott himself described it as Texas Chainsaw Massacre in space. That was the film that he used as his reference point. Visually, it's stunning. You know, the H.R. Geiger style is all over it. Aliens, I love as well. Two very different films. They're their own film. There's Alien and there's Aliens. You can love them both. Although I just think, as I always have this discussion, you can't have Aliens without Scott's original. I know I was reading recently that the director of The Dementor has said that he's taken influence from Scott's film, saying that it's just going to be Alien on a boat with Dracula. I'm sold, Joe. I'm sold. You've got my money already. So you can still see that a film that is 44 years of age is still influencing filmmaking and filmmakers to this day. But look, that is a film that, yeah, okay, we know it's been back in the cinemas this week, but I think we'll move on and talk about this week's big release.
This evil creates terror through total chaos.
So that's a look at Evil Dead Rise, written and directed by Lee Cronin. This is the 5th installment within the Evil Dead franchise. The last one was out in 2013. I wasn't a huge fan. Be interesting to see what you think of that. I know we've got some of our viewers' thoughts on the film because it's been out in cinemas for over a week. But this is moving the series away from the cabin in the woods into the city, into an apartment block, and we have two sisters trying to connect. And hey, what do you throw into the middle of all that? The Book of the Dead and the Deadites. So I am a massive, I love this film. I'm going to say it right from the get-go. Apologies, viewers. No teasing you this week. I adored this. And it's going to be interesting. I don't know, people always say it's great if we disagree in films. I don't think we are this week, but we'll wait and see. Joe, what do you think of Evil Dead Rise?
There's not a mission of us disagreeing. Not a mission at all. No, I absolutely loved it. I thought it was fantastic. It actually exceeded my expectations, if I'm being perfectly honest. Like, it has a bit of a slow start, but that works to its benefit when all hell breaks loose, essentially. But yeah, I absolutely adored it. Just like you mentioned, the idea of just shifting the set into a small apartment block and changing even the character dynamics instead of like the several couples to, you know, a family unit, that just all works in its favour. So then, you know, you can use that to your favour to make what is really, what I felt, you know, for all the gore and everything that comes with these films, it's the psychological element that really, you know, boosted it up for me and really made me go, yep, this is a winner. I really like this film. But yeah, it's just, there's so much about it that I love it. I just find it difficult to really talk about it. But sort of comes down to the look, the effects, the music, everything about it. Just it really hit the nail on the head for me.
There's so much that I love about the film. I mean, it's nasty when it needs to be. There's a great sequence with a cheese grater that I think is going to live in infamy in cinema for quite some time. We also have the two leads, Alicia Sutherland and Lily Sullivan as well. They're fab, and I think you've already alluded to this. It changes the dynamic, you know, the sister dynamic that we haven't really had before. We've got young kids as well, which I have to admit, I haven't really delved deep into the Ash versus Evil Dead series, but I can't really think of children really being in the series to date. But I want to come back to the 2013, you know, is it a remake? Is it a reboot? I think requel, I think, is kind of the way they've looked at it from the producer's point of view, where it does very loosely move the story on. That was a film that for me, I didn't love because it was just too nasty. And Sam Raimi's original, it is nasty. It has its nasty moments, but there is a sense of humour there. There is a dark, twisted sense of humour that comes out much more in Evil Dead 2 and An Army of Darkness. But the 2013 film had none of that. It played it straight, and yeah, it gender swapped the lead role. We have, I think it's Mia, is the lead in that film. It was too nasty. Well, as we've both mentioned, there's a nastiness to this film, but there is as well, I think anyway, the presence of a bit of the original's sense of humour. There's a lot of nods to the original as well, but were you a fan of the 2013 film?
Yeah, I enjoyed it. Don't get me wrong, I don't think it's a masterpiece by any stretch of the imagination. You know, if I'm to rank all of the films so far, it's probably at the bottom, but that's, you know, just shows how strong the franchise is in general. I enjoyed it, and you were mentioning about the nastiness, and that's what I kind of liked about it, and them trying to do something different. It's like, okay, let's maybe step away from the humour, but at the same time, the humorous elements are what make the Evil Dead, you know, stand out amongst other sort of demonic possession horror films. But yeah, overall, I did like it. I didn't love it though.
Look, we will disagree, Stein. I mean, I didn't enjoy watching it. I love my horror, I love my nastiness, I love my gore, but that didn't work for me. And I know they tried to add substance to it about a central character who was trying to overcome their drug addiction. Here we kind of see, again, trying to add a bit of depth to the kind of relationships and kind of the reason for kind of why these demonic presences would target someone. We see that. I want to come back to this, to Evil Dead Rise. I've already mentioned the two leads. Alicia Sutherland is just fantastic. There's something kind of almost Cassandra Peterson about her in that lead role. I think this is a future, you know, scream queen in the making. I thought she was fab. In particular, if I had to, all the performances are solid, but Alicia Sutherland, I thought in particular, was fantastic.
Oh, absolutely, yeah. Like, even when you're watching her performance, you know, prior to, you know, the eventual possession, it's not really a spoiler, it's in the trailer. She's, you know, quite good, but then once you can tell, once she's in that mode of, you know, being a deadite, she just takes it on her level, and she's loving every second of it. You can just see it, and it just comes out in her performance, and there's just like a devilish quality to her, and she's just enjoying it to a degree, and that's why, you know, you've had deadite characters in the past, but I think she's probably one of the most iconic so far, you know, in terms of that there, and I completely agree with you. I'd be really interested to see her do more work in the genre and just seeing, you know, where she goes from here.
Yeah, I mean, I do want to throw out, I mean, we have a couple of comments from viewers. Jim McMorrow, who's been on the show in the past, he absolutely loved it. Michael Hare was a massive fan. Brian Lee Griffith, less so, thought it was awful, didn't like the acting, and was disappointed as a fan of the franchise. I disagree with that. In my opinion, for me, this is, come back to that point, I like this much more than the 2013 film, I have to say. But we haven't mentioned one person in particular. No, it's not Bruce Campbell. It's Lee Cronin, because we had you on the show before, we've had you on the podcast talking about his previous film, The Hole in the Ground, Irish filmmaker. I think he steps into this franchise not just with ease, with both feet happily on the ground, and knows exactly what he needs to do. I think he does a fab job here.
Oh, absolutely. I agree with you 100%. Like, you think about the conditions he had to make the film in, you know, in the midst of lockdowns and stuff like that there. And you can imagine how difficult it would be with all the blood that's involved. But at the same time, what, you know, based on even The Hole in the Ground, what he does have his own distinct look and style, that murkiness to it. But he applies it to Evil Dead whilst being reverential to, you know, the sort of techniques Sam Raimi would have utilised in his films. And I thought, like you said, he just does it with ease. There doesn't seem to be any problems with it. And, you know, when I've been listening to interviews with him, it's clear he is a huge fan of the franchise, and, you know, he was really down to get, you know, his teeth into it.
Yeah. What I like, coming back to the point you've made, is that I see enough of Lee Cronin coming through from, if you haven't watched it, I would definitely recommend seeking out The Hole in the Ground. But my fear was, I think at the time I said, I think, you know, this is a director, clearly a talented filmmaker, knows horror. My concern at the time was he's going to end up working in, you know, the Conjuring franchise, where it's generic, cut and paste. This is what we want, replicate what James Wan did in the original. But here, whether that's a testament to Sam Raimi, Bruce Campbell, etc., Ted Raimi as producers, they've allowed him yeah, as you say, to hold a candle to the original series, but do his own thing. So I can't wait to see whether he directs another installment in the franchise, whether he moves on to something else. I don't know, but Lee Cronin, 2 horror films in, I'm sold. I had the pleasure of meeting Lee at the time when he was doing the press rounds for The Hole in the Ground, so great to see him. Irish boy, done good in horror. But with that, let's move on, let's move away from horror, and let's go to this week's Pick of the Streams.
Tell me about the eyewitness. Yeah, Amish kid, 8 years old.
A man of force.
I'm a police officer, ma'am. I have to talk to the boy.
A woman of faith.
You don't understand. We have nothing to do with your laws.
Yes, I do. Your son's a material witness to a homicide.
Worlds apart.
Now you have a witness.
Yeah, now I got a witness.
John, what's going on, man? What is happening?
You said we would be safe in Philadelphia.
Well, I was wrong.
He left with the Amish woman, right?
If they find me, they find the boy.
You bring this man to our house with his gun of the hand. You bring fear to this house.
Everyone has an idea about you and the Englishman.
They're looking for you.
I have done nothing against the rule of the Ordner.
Nothing? Maybe not yet.
We know where you are.
Harrison Ford and Kelly McGillis. Witness.
So that's a look at Witness, which was this week's Pick the Stream. I think we need to start doing this in the show rather than always talking about new releases that are available on streaming services. It's given you an opportunity to go back and look at older films. As 1985, Peter Weir's film starring Harrison Ford. Shout out to Robert Robinson, who guessed correctly when we showed the little clip of the film what we were going to be talking about. So I came to this. I had seen this when I was younger, Joe. I'm a huge Harrison Ford fan. We are going to see him as Indy, supposedly for one last outing. He keeps assuring us it's going to be his last outing as Indiana Jones. But I think it's important to see beyond the Star Wars franchise and the Indiana Jones franchise. It's great to see that Harrison Ford can cut his teeth on other things. My mum is a huge fan of this film. We see a detective having to immerse himself in the Amish community after a young boy, Lucas Haas, played by Lucas Haas, is a witness to a crime. And we have Danny Glover as well, in it, albeit a very brief role, very small supporting role, and Viggo Mortensen as well from rewatching it. So it'll be interesting what you think. I loved it from when I was watching it when I was younger with my mum. But what did you think? Had you seen this before we asked you to review it for the show?
Oh yeah, several times. Yeah, and yeah, I love it. Well, that kind of gave it away. If I've watched it several times, I must like it. I'm not going to lie, I thought when you said Witness originally we were going to do, I got it mixed up with that new film Ghosted, and I was just dreading it. But anyway, I'm glad we're doing Witness because, yeah, it's a film I absolutely love. You know, just like you alluded to, you know, it's one of those first films that Harrison Ford really showed, you know, I am a proper actor as well. I'm not just, you know, this charismatic lead in the likes of Indiana Jones or Han Solo. I think he was nominated for an Oscar for it. I think it's his only Oscar nomination in his whole career, but he's just fantastic in it. It's his chemistry with Kelly McGillis, which is just really like the foundation of the film. It's their two characters' sense of longing, even though they come from two separate worlds, as it were. That's just, you know, really roots the film, and just that's what really makes me come back to it all the time, because it's that aspect of it that I love more than anything. As well as that, I love the score. Like I would just occasionally just listen to it at random, just if you're going for a walk or whatever. It kind of reminded me of, you know, going back to Blade Runner. It's that kind of Vangelis sort of flavour to it. And even the look of the film is great. You know, some of them shots in the Amish land's just beautiful. But even the fish out of water element, you know, that adds a bit of humour to it, and I really, really enjoy it. Like it just brings me back when I used to work in retail. And when you're filling up the milk in the morning, my mate, who was a big fan of the film as well, always would come up and go, "Milk time!" Just like one of the Amish farmers in it, and it was fantastic. But yeah, I absolutely love the film.
Yeah, it's fab. A lot of things that you said. Again, apologies viewers this week. It's a repetitive show. We both like the same things. What can we say? There's a lot of stuff. What I love about the fact that it's a very 70s looking and feel kind of film. It's very unfussy. It's not in a rush to get to the end. It takes its time, like you've mentioned. I love that little dynamic between Harrison Ford and Kelly McGillis. The fact that will they, won't they, should they, and how that resolves itself by the end. I think it's a very, it's, without going into spoilers, it's from my point of view, I think it's very satisfactory in that sense of these are two people from two very different backgrounds, and would they ever really be able to make it work? But I know it's an old film, but we'll not talk too much in spoilers. Like you've mentioned, Maurice Jarre is the composer, very Vangelis-esque, I have to say, and the John Seale doing the DOP. It's just effortless. We talked about this a couple of weeks ago with Steven Spielberg. Steven Spielberg makes things look effortless because he's that good. And this is just a film that, with all on board, everybody there, both in front of and behind the camera, just make it seem very unfussy, very easy. Yes, elements of it, I suppose, have dated in that sense, but I still think you could stick this on now, and there's not a lot that overly dates it too much. I think it still stands the test of time. I'm a big fan of it. As I say, my mum loves it. I was speaking to a friend, and his mum loves it, and now you love it as well, Joe. So that's all good on that regards. But look, we are nearly out of time. So I think it's been two films we've both loved this week, so that's always good. That's what we've talked about this week. Let's have a look at what we'll be reviewing next week.
Saved my life, man. Wish I had a life worth saving.
What are you talking about?
Sit around and watch the same movies over and over.
I always thought you could have made a cool movie.
You're right. I'm living on borrowed time. No more watching movies.
I'm gonna make a movie!
What's the movie gonna be about?
It's about him working here.
Meta.
Everything in the script is something either me or someone I know said.
I'm not even supposed to be here today. Maybe Jay and Silent Bob could be characters.
Jay and Silent Bob are like C-3PO and R2-D2. They've been here since the first movie, which was the last time they were cool. But they've been with the franchise so long, they still give them cameos and put them on the lunchboxes.
I found something.
I've got my eye on you.
They are not taking her away without a fight.
I will strike down you or anyone else who tries to get in my way. How about the bikini area?
Let's dance. We need to get Lena out.
How?
Mischief is afoot.
Lena's not going anywhere.
So that's a look at the films we'll be reviewing next week. One of them, of course, is Clerks 3, Joe. I don't know if you're a huge Kevin Smith fan. I don't know if you've got round to watching Clerks 3. It's available on Prime. Darren and I are going to be talking about it next week. I haven't watched the film yet. We'll be reviewing it next week. Whatever people do this weekend, I hope they have fun at the cinema, and hopefully there's no annoying people talking or looking at their phones during the screen. But no matter what you do, I don't think anyone is going to have as much fun at their trip to the multiplex as much as this moose did in Alaska. There's a moose loose about this picture hoose. Don't know if that works, Joe. And just as we were watching that little clip and that footage, he came up with a wonderful joke to finish the show.
Of course, you know, you can't end a show without a joke, but it's moose related as well. So what did the angry moose say to the duck?
I don't know, Joe.
Don't moose with me.
Yeah. Well, it's a joke, you know. I'm sure if someone laughed at home, that is the main thing. But look, that is us out of time. So stick to the reviews. Maybe not try kind of going for the stand-up career, Joe. I don't know. But either way, thank you very much for giving up your time this evening.
No, thanks, Jim.
And thanks very much for watching at home. We'll be back next week with another show. But for now, until then, goodbye.